Hi guys, welcome to this developer channel. Today we are going to see how the javaScript is interacting with SQL Server using Web API. So in our today's demonstration, we will perform a CRUDE operations in SQL Server from the javaScript using Web API. So this would be a basic design or architecture how the javaScript will indirectly interact with SQL Server using Web API. Of the javaScript, we utilize AJAX or XML HTTP request to call the Web API. These are the development steps. Step number 1, download javaScript library and resources. Steps 2, SQL database setup, create database and tables. Step 3, Web API for interactions between JavaScript and SQL for CRUDE operation. Steps 4, configure Web API core to access from the JS code. Step 5, setup of SQL connection in Web API to interact with SQL Server. Step 6, JavaScript code changes for CRUDE operation. Step number 1, download JavaScript library and resource. To download JavaScript, refer this URL and enter. This download URL is also given into a description. Click on download source. You will be able to download a zip file. Click on download source and download a zip file. Once you download the zip file and extract it, it will look like this. Inside that folder, it appears so many resources. There are so many HTML pages are given over here, but in our today's sessions, we will use these 3 resources. Like this is a cascade style sheet, this is a JavaScript file, and one of our HTML resources. So let's open these resources into a Visual Studio. Step number 2, create database and tables in SQL Server. Open the SQL Server Management Studio and connect with SQL Server. Import the sample data from the CSV file to test those records in the javaScript. If you open this file in Microsoft Excel, then this data appears well organized and in tabular format. Let's open this file with Microsoft Excel. Let's import this data into SQL Server. When we import this data into SQL Server, simultaneously, we will also create a table into SQL Server database. Click on Database. We have to create a new database. Give the name of the database. Select the database. Select the task. Click on Import Data. Click on Next. Choose source as a flat file source because we have a CSV file, and locate the files. Desktop, sample data, we have to choose a type as a CSV file. And click on Next. You can see those records in a tabular format. Next, we have to choose the destination, SQL Server. Choose SQL Server native client. Leave other settings as it is. Click on Next. Click on Edit Mappings. Create destination table. Here we need to change the name of the table as optional details. Click on OK. We can also update the name over here. Click on Next. Run immediately. Finish this. Looks like all these actions are executed successfully. Let's check. Select the database, click on refresh icon. Check the tables. Click on the tables and you can watch top 200 records from here. See, all the records from the CSV file are populated inside SQL Server. So we have created database and tables. We have also populated some records into this database table. Step number 3, Web API for interaction between javaScript and SQL for CRUDE operation. Open the Visual Studio and create a new Web API project. We need to perform CRUD operations for this personal detail object. So let's create the class for this personal detail table. Let's create a separate file where all business objects class would be defined. As I have created a separate common business object file, and I have declared that class. Inside this file, we have created this class to perform CRUD operations for this SQL Server table. Let's get rid of this controller. We will put controller as per our requirement. I have put this load data controller to load the data from SQL Server to javaScript. To retrieve data from the SQL Server, we will implement later. Similarly, we are writing another controllers for CRUD operation. As I have written another methods for insert, update and delete the records from the SQL Server. So these are the controllers or Web API methods which would be called from the JavaScript, and appropriate actions would be performed on database. So our load data controller, this method will use to return the records list from SQL to javaScript. Insert data methods will utilize to insert the records into database. Update data methods will use to update the records into database. Similar way, delete data methods will use to delete records in database. Step number 4, configure Web API course to access from JavaScript code. To do course related configurations, please click on the program.cs file. And here we need to add some course policy. Once we register our policy, we have to also utilize it. by using app.useCourse. Here, as per the business requirement, you can choose any domain or any origin, any methods or any headers as per the business or project requirements. Step number 5. SQL Connection in Web API to interact with SQL Server. In step number 3, we have created a Web API. We have created various controllers for the CRUDE operation. Like load data, it will return the record list from the SQL to javaScript. Insert data controller, it will insert the records into a database. Similarly, update and delete controllers we have created for update the records and delete the records respectively. Now we want to write the code to connect with the SQL Server and how we can retry the data, update the data, delete the data, create the data. Now let's code to interact with SQL Server. Let's create a separate file which contains SQL Server connections related code. Let's add a file, give a name, database common. First, let's define a connection string. Now, how to write the connection string? Let's connect SQL Server from the Widget Studio. Press Alt Ctrl S. It will open the Server Explorer. Or you can also choose Server Explorer. That is, the shortcut is Ctrl Alt S. Here, please click on the Connect to Database. Give the name of the server. Copy that server from the SQL Server Management Studio. Copy this one. Once you paste the server name here, it will automatically display the list of the databases. Select this one, click on Test Connection, or Test Connection is succeed. Click on OK. Click on this connection. Click on Properties. Now we have to use the value of this connection string. Copy the value of this connection string. Now in order to perform the CRUDE operation, we can use SQL command execute non-query or create, update and delete. In order to read or retry the records, we will use open the dataset methods, which will return the list of the records. Let's write methods for open the connection. To open the connections, we need SQL connection object. As SQL connection is not appears in IntelliSense, so we need to add related package. It's system.data.SQL client. Okay, and associated with our SQL connection string. Let's declare it. Our string is static. Now in open connection, we have to check connection is equal to null. Then we have to define open. That's it. Similarly, we'll write the method of close connection. Then we have to close it. in order to CRUDE operation. Create, update, or delete. We will write command.execute non-query method, and for read record, we will give its name as a open data set. So for load the data, we have written a get dataset method. It will take input as a SQL query and return the dataset. In order to perform the operations, first we will open the connection and we use SQL command, which is associated with connection and our input SQL query. We will use SQL data adapter, which behaves as a bridge between the SQL server and our programs. It will help to fill the datasets with the records which fetch from our database. And finally, we'll dispose dataset and close the connections. Similar way, execute query will use to create, delete, or update records into a database. So using the command .execute non-query method, the query will directly execute it into a SQL server. So now we have created a database methods which will help to load the data as well as helps to create, update, or delete records into a database. So based on this, let's update the controller code. First of all, let's update the name of this CS file. Instead of weather forecast, let's update to the javaScript demo controller. Now in the load data controller, as I have written the entire code to retry all the data, person detail table, I used db.getDataset, which will return the dataset, and we will use the first table of the dataset, and we will map the each records of the data table into appropriate class, that is a person object. So we will get the entire tables containing all the records of the personal details table, and we will return list of the person object. So similarly, let's write the code for insert data. I've written the code for insert data as well. For all the request objects, we will create an insert query. At the end, we will execute that SQL query. Based on the affected records, we will also give response into a string. Similar way, let's write the code for the update data controller. List of the person object as a request. So we will process all the objects containing into this list, and we will create a SQL query for update the table. Let's write the code for delete data controller as well. Based on the auto ID of the person, we will create a SQL query, and at the end we will execute that query. Based on the affected records, we will give the response as a string, like how many records are deleted. Looks like we have written the code for all the controllers. Now let's check the code from the Postman. Open the Postman. Click on new request, and we have to give the URL. So first of all, we are going to test this load data controllers method. The method name will be load data. So let's execute our web API. So here you can see those all the methods we have created for the javaScript demonstration. We are going to test load data method. Click on try it out and click on execute. Instead of Postman, now browser have that utility to check our web API. See, response comes and all those records appears over here. So use this URL Postman. And change it to a post, as we are using post method. See, HTTP post, so we have to keep as a post there, and just click on send. Yeah, you can see same JSON response we received over here. So our load data method is working as expected. Let's check the insert data controller. Here our input is the list of person object. So let's insert any record. As that is a list, so we have to make it array. As of now, we are inserting a one record. In the insert process, auto ID is not required. Canon Johnston 2, make it as 42, country as a 2, address underscore 2, married is a false, date of birth is a instead of 8, giving 7, try to send. Yeah, we have to also update the name of this method. This is the insert data method. After that, just click on send. See, success, one record is created because we are sending that string as a response. Success, one record created. Okay, so insert method is also working as expected. Now check update data controller. See guys, we have inserted this record into a database. Let's check into the database. For inserted record would be and the last. Yes, see, that is the record. The record's auto ID is 17. Let's try to update this record. For update, we need auto ID. Auto ID would be 17. What change we want to make? Like instead of 2, I want to make as underscore text. Instead of 42, I want to make is 43. Country I want to make is 3. Based on this number, there is a country associated with it. Later on we will also see this. Address is modified. Now let's do it. Update the method name. Click on send. See, one record is updated. Similarly, we can check into a database. So before update, see it is Canon Johnston 2, age, country, address value, law. Now let's execute and check. See, that record is updated. Now let's check for the delete record. This record I want to delete, having auto ID 17, which we have inserted recently. Click on send. Success, one record is deleted. So in database, once I execute, the 7th record will be removed. See, that record is gone. So it looks like our all controllers methods are working as expected. So let's open this HTML file into a Visual Studio and do appropriate changes in this JavaScript file. These are the various features which are available with the JS grid, like heading, that is used for hide show this header row. Filtering, see, that is useful for hide show this row. This row is used to find any records based on its value, like copy this and search it, so it will give the result based on our search. Clear the filter. Inserting, like if you want to add any new records, then we have to give values and click on add icon. It will insert new record. If we disable this, then we are not able to add any new records. Similar way for editing, like on click of any records, it allows to edit any records. If we disable this, then we are not able to edit any records. So it's a wonderful features are given with this JS grid. Paginations, if we uncheck this, then scroll will be appear, with paging functionality will be appear. Similar way for the sorting, like as of now, it's able to sort the values. If we disable this, then we are not able to sort any column. As of now, CRUDE operation is performed on JSON object, not in SQL Server. We want to implement the data interactions into a SQL Server. So let's do the changes in JavaScript. So guys, as we at custom view HTML, I open into a Visual Studio, and we can see there are so many JavaScript libraries are used over here. As part of the functionality features, we need to use those library. For each feature, there is a separate JavaScript library. So based on our requirement, you can get rid JavaScript library reference from here. As of now, we have given the values true for editing, sorting, paging, etc. But later on in your code, you can set this value based on your business requirement or as per the access privileges to your user. So those all settings can be performed over here. And this is the controller DB. This is the main things where this DB is defined. These are the various fields, which fields we need to display to a grid. So now let's check the code which is related to a database, db.js. Yeah, we have given a reference db.js. Let's open that JS inside this Visual Studio. What is inside this JS? There is one object of DB with this function: load data, insert items, update item, and delete item. So these are the functions where we have to implement our code to interact with the SQL Server. For now, this static data we need to get rid. This static data. However, we will use this countries records, like for 0, 1, 2, 3. There are various countries names are associated with this number. So leave it is as it is. Now how to write this JavaScript? See, Postman also allows that facility to give the code. We will use JavaScript XSHR. Copy this code. We'll put it inside our JavaScript file. So we have written a code for the load.js. Similarly, we can write the code for insert item, update item, delete item. So in my times, this code is already written. So I updated this code like for load data, insert data. Okay, so I think we have done the changes JavaScript level. Few changes also be needed while you are using fresh HTML resource. Then like you have to rename the column names. You have to also put custom control for the date of birth field. Now let's check custom view HTML. Let's see, these are the records. If we remove paging, then it will appear the number of records, like it is 16. See, there's 16 numbers of records are appears here. For example, if we are creating any records for creation, serial number will not required. We can disable in case of creation this column. You can see Jonathan 38. If we copy and try to find that name, also we are able to find the record. Let's update the name Jonathan. Find paste. Update this. Success. One record is updated. Okay. So should update and delete. Let's delete this record with confirmation dialog. Okay. One record is deleted. Clear filter. If we execute, so last row would be removed. See, delete pressing is also worked as expected. Paging, editing, disable after this checkbox. So guys, this was the basic functionality of javaScript, and today we have enhanced it to interact with SQL Server. You can like or subscribe this channel for more development related videos. Thanks for watching this video.